Tonight, we're going the distance with a former world champion, riding neck and neck with a Gold Cup winner and doing a man-to-man marking job on the new Northern Ireland manager. On the eve of St Patrick's Day and the Cheltenham National Hunt Festival, as thousands of Irishmen head to the mainland, Onside has the advance party. Barry McGuigan, Jonjo O'Neill and Lawrie McMenemy. Plus, the Tour de France hits Ireland. And for Bordeaux and Boulogne, read Ballykissangel. And after his heroic century in the 5th Test against the West Indies, and doubtless very frustrated by the rain which robbed England of a possible victory, joining us from Barbados, Mark Ramprakash. They're all onside tonight. Well, first up tonight, one of the smallest big names in British boxing history. The youngest ever Commonwealth Games boxing champion in 1978, Barry McGuigan's professional career began 3 years later, and British and European titles followed in quick succession. One tragedy apart, an opponent died after fighting him. It was plain sailing all the way to a world title shot in 1985.
And it's surely all over. And Carbergan, it's all over.
20 million watched on television, and the pre-match entertainment at Loftus Road was his dad.
McGuigan's work has not been so effective in this round. He hasn't found the range. Yes, he did. He's got it with the right. Oh, the champion's over in the 7th. He found him with the right.
A united Northern Ireland welcomed him home. McGuigan fought for peace, and Protestant and Catholic alike cheered his award as Sports Personality of the Year. But after 2 successful defences of that title, in the heat of Las Vegas, a mere 125 degrees, Steve Cruz proved too strong for him. The bell tolled for his career in the ring. After 2 years out, a brief comeback foundered. He then had a bitter legal row with former manager Barney Eastwood, but his commitment to the sport remains as strong as ever. He founded the Boxers' Union to shift the balance of power away from promoters and managers towards the fighters themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry McGuigan. I think the Dublin to Cheltenham Express has stopped here on the way tonight. There's something wonderfully Irish about the start of your boxing career, isn't there? Because you were 12 years old, and your uncle was the timekeeper.
That's right.
But he couldn't keep the time.
My Uncle Dennis, actually, was in Clonus, and you can expect him to have got caught up in the action, and he let it run on. The first round was supposed to be 1.5 minutes, and it ended up 2.5 minutes, and I was pretty knackered at the end of it. So, although I won, it was a pretty tough first encounter in the ring.
And 17 years on, when you called it quits at 29, that almost seems, given the guys who are sort of 40-odd and still fighting these days, nowadays that seems absurdly young. Are there moments when you think, I made a big mistake there?
No, I don't. I think everybody has got their own sort of, they set their own sights, and they know, John, when it's time to pack it in. I mean, the problem is that so many of them nowadays, they carry on too long. And, you know, I remember Alexis Arguello saying, they always say the fighter's the last one to know when it's time to quit. I want to be the first. And those are my sentiments exactly. But, you know, the real truth is they're the first ones to know, but the last ones to admit it to themselves. And nearly always it's because of money and money problems. And I thought, you know, 1989 was time to pack it in. I could feel things starting to slip away in my penultimate fight. And then I decided after the Jimmy McDonald fight in Manchester, where it was cut, that it was time to throw in the towel.
Did you actually sit in the dressing room that night and think never again?
No, I I just knew, funny enough, I knew it before the fight. I knew in the fight previous to that, I had the guy going. I fought a guy called Julio Miranda in Pickett's Lock, and I had him down in the third round, and he got up again. And I ran to the neutral corner, and I had a minute and a half in the round. Now, the old Barry McGuigan, or the first generation Barry McGuigan, wouldn't have allowed him to continue. Or he wouldn't have got through the third round, but he did. And I just said, well, you know, it dragged on. I got cut in the next round, and it went on. And I just said, look, it's not there anymore. I just didn't seem to want it as much, and the ambition that seemed to had slipped away. And my father had passed away, and things had changed for me, and I just knew it was time to think of another occupation.
I mean, you're alluding there to the brutality of the sport, which is, you know, one of these sort of intrinsic parts of it, in a way, part of its great attraction. But of course, you were involved in one of the sort of great tragedies of sport in the 80s. One of your opponents, young Ali, actually died as a result of a fight with you.
Yeah.
What impact did that have on you?
Well, tremendous impact on me. It was a very difficult time in my life, and I had only started my career. My wife was heavily pregnant. I had no other form of income. I had dedicated my entire life to boxing. I had put all my eggs in the one basket, and I just couldn't turn away at that time. And whilst I had a great deal of sympathy, and I went through a very difficult time, traumatic time, after several months out of the ring, I decided I had to carry on. I just had to. I just couldn't turn to something else. It was either a labouring job or go back and try again. And I put it in my mind that if I would win the title, I would dedicate it to the young guy. And in the middle of tears and everything, when I was talking to Harry Carpenter afterwards, he was able to decipher what I said, and I said, look, this is for the young man who died, and his family and his memory. And it meant an awful lot to me.
It's going to happen again. Boxers are going to die in the ring at odd occasions, and there will then be the inevitable clamour to ban the sport. From many people who are well respected in the medical profession. When those arguments are trotted out, what do you say against them? Well,
it's quite simple. Quite simply, boxing statistically is one of the lowest form one of the lowest tragedy-wise and serious injury-wise. John, that's the fact. That's the facts. The facts are there. However, I know it's a dangerous sport. I know people will suffer in the future, and there will possibly be another tragedy. But people should be allowed to take part in dangerous sports and should be allowed to do what they want to do if they want to do it. We live in a democracy at the end of the day, and that's the bottom line. And boxing is an art form. To me, it's always been an art form. There is danger, and of course there's danger. That was possibly what attracted me most about it. But it's the greatest sport in the world. As you talked about, 20 million people watched the fight when I won the title, and people love it. And as long as people want to watch it and take part in it, it will go on.
You talk about being an art form, of course. You've now sort of branched out into sort of advising Daniel Day-Lewis, the actor, on his boxing career in this new movie, The Boxer. I think we can actually see a bit of that movie with Daniel Day-Lewis in the ring. Here we are.
Go on, Danny! Are you okay? Can you continue?
One of the greatest featherweight champions, and certainly probably one of the greatest Irish athletes that ever came out of the country. Wonderful man. And probably my first interest in boxing came about through Barry, when everyone in that country followed him through the European and World Championship, and he single-handedly brought that community together for a moment, a brief moment, and it was an amazing thing to see.
Well, a glowing tribute from him
God,
there.
I didn't see that before.
No, absolutely.
Wonderful.
But if you can make, and I gather he's not bad, is he?
Very good at it.
So if you can make an actor a boxer, could you take anybody from the audience here tonight, and with proper training?
Can I choose? Well, I tell you, I was looking at Big Ronald in the change room, and he's a former basketball player, 6'9". I just wish I'd have been 6'6" instead of 5'6". You know, I'd have made myself a fortune. You know?
but I mean, do we all have it in us to be a boxer or not?
We all have aggression, obviously in different degrees, and some of us are athletic and coordinated, and others aren't. Daniel happened to be exceptionally coordinated. He was very good and very fit and athletic anyway. So it was only a matter of spending time and perseverance and being prepared to go through with the training. That's a difficulty, you know.
You mentioned your dad earlier on, and I know he's a sort of major influence on your life, and singing at Loftus Road before the fight against Pedrosa. But I'm not sure most people watching will actually have ever seen this before.
One day, while I was out walking, I saw your face in the midst of a crowd. Here I thought is the chance of a lifetime. I thought you'd step from a cloud.
Do you recall watching that?
I do. I was only 7 years old at the time. I remember the big hullabaloo when he came home after winning the Irish Song Contest, and it was marvellous time. We all ran out the wrong road because he was coming home from Dublin. We all went out the Cavan Road. In fact, he was coming home the Monaghan Road. But you know that jacket that he had? I had that right up to the night the night that I won the world title, and then my mum's house burned down. She used to light a holy candle for me and put it on top of the television. Had me win the world title and burn the bloody house down.
I might just ask you one question as well about almost the heir to your throne, Prince Nassim Hamid. If you were fighting at your prime and he was at his prime, as he is now...
That's an unfair question.
I know it's an unfair... But what do you think? What do you think?
Well, it would have been a tough fight for him. I mean, a lot of the guys around nowadays are not. I don't think there's so many world titles these days that I don't think there are as many good fighters certainly as there was in my day. Maybe that's a bit unfair to Naz, but he's an exceptional kid, and I don't want to pretend that I could have beaten him, but it would have been a good fight. He's a great kid, and he's going to go on for a long time, and it's great to talk about him. He's an exception.
Sure, absolutely. Well, stay there. Because we're going to move on to talk about another great Irish from now. If you think boxing's a tough sport, let's turn now to a jump jockey who's broken just about every bone in his body, and that's just for starters.
In the thick of it, Jonjo O'Neill and the mare that made him a hero, Dawn Run. Jonjo's gung-ho style of riding landed him in hospital as often as the winner's enclosure, and he fought a constant battle to stay fit. In 1986, though, it all came together with the horse who'd already won him a champion hurdle. Cheltenham had never seen anything like it.
As they race to the line, and the mare's beginning to get up, and as they come to the line, she's made it! Dawn Run has won it! Jonjo O'Neill punches the air as the mare has made tough history here at Cheltenham.
Later that year, a much tougher fight against lymphatic cancer, just as he'd started life as a trainer. Another challenge to overcome, and he was back where he belonged with a winner at Cheltenham, the place where he made his name as the bravest of the brave.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jonjo O'Neill. Now, we were hearing there about Barry's sporting debut, but you actually learnt to ride on a pig. Is that right?
Right, Tom, yeah. If you can ride a pig, you can ride anything.
So talk us through the technique of riding a pig.
You've no range, you've no steering, you've nothing really, and they're quite difficult, but they're managed somehow.
And at what age did you suddenly sit on a horse and someone said, he's got it?
I was always keen, really. I sat on the donkeys first. I started off with those, and
pigs to donkeys to...
gradually onto the ponies. I went just one step at a time, and I just always felt natural at it, really. I never had any problem with it, I didn't think. Everybody else did, but I didn't.
Now, of course, the moment you leave the studio tonight, in the depths of the night, you're going to be hurtling down to Cheltenham because this is the mass exodus of Irish people to the West Country. What is it about the Cheltenham National Hunt Festival that makes it so special, especially for the Irish?
It's just magic. I mean, it's just fantastic. It's the place to be. You've got the best horses, you've got the best jockeys, you've got the best prize money. I mean, it is just something. When you walk on Cheltenham, it's just magic.
But what about all these stories one hears about, you know, members of the clergy turning up with stashes of punts under their holy clothes and that sort of thing? Are these all apocryphal, or are they really true?
A lot of them are true, you know. The collections have to go somewhere, don't they?
You're a racing man, Barry?
No, I'm not. I know absolutely nothing about horses, and I don't drink either, so I'm not really an Irishman at all.
Well, if you don't bet, Jonjo's going to mark your card for Cheltenham in a few moments' time. So, I mean, let's talk about that great moment you had with Dawn Run in the early 80s. We can see here the fantastic scenes when you got back to the Unsaddling enclosure. Those must be the sort of moments that sportsmen dream about.
Absolutely, you dream about something like that and you never think you're going to be involved, sort of style, really. And on that particular day, everything just happened to go right for her, really. She was basically a novice mare going there and with a big reputation, and the pressure was on. As I said before, all Ireland knew she was going to win, and I was hoping she would, so she did. And probably the way she did it made it more fantastic, really, and just the people win crackers.
A driving finish, certainly.
Yeah.
But you must have felt that life had given you a pretty bum deal, because within a year, not only had Dawn Run died, but you'd contracted cancer. That was real swings and roundabouts, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an up and down year, really, but there were some great times and some really hard times, but we'll look at the great times.
I mean, you were known as a very belligerent rider in a sense, that you were never, ever going to concede defeat until that winning post had been reached. Did that help you when it came to combating the illness? Did you feel you had to have that almost sheer bloody-mindedness, that I'm damned if I'm going to be beaten by this?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's mind over matter in a lot of cases, really. But, I mean, I was also very lucky to be at the right place at the right time. And I was at Christie's Hospital in Manchester, and they were absolutely fantastic with me, you know. And I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and everything went the right way for me.
But does it change your life subsequently? I mean, the weather forecast for the next few days at Cheltenham is wonderful. So it's, you know, one of the great sporting amphitheatres of the world, beautiful blue skies. Do you look out on it now and say, I might never have seen this again?
Oh, I definitely do. Every day is a bonus, a big bonus. You know, every morning you wake up is fantastic. Because I certainly, at that stage, going through the illness, I certainly didn't think I'd be here today anyway. But thank God everything went right, and you know, it just all came right for me at the right time, thank God.
I must just ask you both, actually, about the reputations of both your sports, which intermittently, and especially in horse racing sense, in the last few weeks has taken a bit of a battering. A lot of mud has been thrown at horse racing. How confident can we all be that the events at Cheltenham and subsequently are fair and above board?
I think they're very fair and above board, really. I think we've got a great, you know, committee to organise racing. I think they're doing a very good job in it. We don't always agree with it, but I think overall they're doing a very good job. And
did you always ride every horse you ever rode on its merits?
Of course.
Jonjo.
His nose is grown. No, I mean, in boxing, people say that, you know, there are fights that are crooked and all that. That's absolute nonsense. In all my time in the ring, I've never watched a fight that's been crooked. I've seen guys who didn't really try and didn't make an effort, but I've never seen a dishonest fight in my life, honestly. The guys, I remember watching one night in the Albert Hall, about 5 of the early fights, Jonjo, went off very quickly. They were all knockouts, and there was an hour and a half to the main event. So they quickly rushed in a couple of guys that went pitter-patter for 8 rounds, but that was it. And I thought, I can't believe this. I can't. Maybe I'm naive or something, but I've never seen it before. I really haven't.
But what about the reputation of boxing, you know, with the spectre of the managers and the promoters who seem to be at each other's throats the whole time, and in the law courts, and all these different world championships, you know, the WBA, the WBC, the WD-40. How much, you know, but doesn't that demean the sport a bit?
It may dilute the value of a world title, but it doesn't mean there's not good fighters out there. There are some fantastic fighters out there, really are. And I talk about it all the time on the sports channel that we work with, and they're absolutely fantastic fights. But I don't like the variation of titles either. I don't agree with that. And at some stage we're going to have to draw the line and stop and say, look, we're not going to recognise any more titles. But there's still some fantastic fighters.
Okay, we're talking about titles. Who's going to be the champion hurdler and the Gold Cup winner this week, Jonjo? And there's 4 million people watching.
I think Esterac will win the champion hurdle, and I hope Dawn's Pride wins
the Gold Cup on Thursday.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much to both of you. Two legends of Irish sport, Barry McGuigan and Jonjo O'Neill. Well, a couple of hours ago, the fifth test in the West Indies ended in a disappointing draw, at least as far as England were concerned. And of all things, it was rain that denied England the chance of victory in Barbados. There's the scorecard. The West Indies 112 for 2 when they decided there was no point in going on. And that means they take a 2-1 lead into the final match in Antigua that starts on Friday. Well, joining us now from Barbados, the man who hoped he'd be a match-winning hero, and that's Mark Ramprakash. I guess your overriding thoughts about today is just enormous despair, isn't it? Frustration. This could have been a great English victory.
Absolutely. I think the game was very nicely poised, with the West Indies chasing 300. And the way they bat, they tend to play their shots, which would have given us a very good chance of getting them out. And certainly it's very disappointing for the large English contingent of fans here in Barbados.
And when sort of mid-morning you looked out and saw the rain coming down, did you think, I just don't believe this?
Well, I was very surprised this morning when I went to breakfast and we saw the overcast skies and we thought that it would probably clear. But unfortunately it's stayed in all day and it has been very frustrating for the players.
Did you countenance at all the possibility of the West Indies getting those runs?
Oh, no, I think, you know, people spoke about that. No, I don't feel the West Indies had a realistic chance of getting those runs. I feel England were in the box seat, as it were, and certainly I think Phil Tufnell would have come into his own on a wearing pitch, and we fancied our chances of an England win, certainly.
Now, you're man of the match, and I assume that's the man of the match medal that's around your neck at the moment. That innings on the first and second days, when certainly at lunch on the first day it looked as though England might be heading for a fairly cataclysmic total. How important has that been to you, your maiden Test century?
Well, it's very hard to explain. It's an enormous thing for me to achieve. It's to get 3 figures in a Test match has been my ambition for a very long time. I made my debut in 1991. And I've had lots of ups and downs in Test cricket. It's a tremendous thrill to get my maiden 100 against the West Indies, who obviously are a great team. And, you know, I really feel that I've really enjoyed this success and I want to savor the moment.
You've been the next big thing so often. Was there a time when you thought, I'm never going to be a big thing?
Absolutely. There's been many occasions where I've been at rock bottom. Things have not gone my way in Test cricket and I've wondered whether I would ever succeed at this level. And I think that's why it means so much to me to actually finally get 100 in Test cricket. It's my dream and you know, I'm just so very thrilled about it.
Well, there were certainly very understated celebrations when you got there in that first innings. What's the difference as far as you're concerned? What's made you a Test centurion?
Well, I think that I've worked quite hard on my approach to the game. I felt that I haven't enjoyed Test cricket in recent years. It's been a great pressure. I've not enjoyed the atmosphere at all, and I've worked quite hard and sat down and looked at that, and I felt that, you know, why am I playing this game? It's to enjoy it, to go out and enjoy the game. And when I got picked in the summer for the last Test match against the Australians, I made up my mind that I would really try and go out and enjoy that game because I didn't really know if I'd ever play for England again.
Were you consumed by nerves then? Was that one of the main problems?
Yeah, I think there was lots of reasons that contributed to my poor performance, and certainly nerves was one of them. But I'm very happy to have turned it around, and I'm just trying to establish myself in the team and get a run of scores going. And as I say, approach each match to go out and enjoy myself and enjoy the game.
Well, let's hope this very much is your coming of age on the Test arena. What about this final Test match in Antigua? What are you playing for?
Well, I think England have competed very, very well in this series and certainly on equal terms with the West Indies. We feel that we could easily be 2-1 up. We played very well, good cricket in this Test match here in Barbados. and I felt that we had the upper hand. So we'll want to continue in that vein in Antigua and certainly try and level the series.
Well, many congratulations. Thanks an awful lot for talking to us. Here's maybe to a double 100 in Antigua.
That would be splendid.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Ramprakash. You can see the highlights, albeit limited highlights, of that last day's play in Barbados. After Quentin Tarantino and Barry Norman on Film 98, that's BBC One tonight at 11:55. Now let's backpedal to Ireland, and the world's greatest sporting event on two wheels has an unusual starting point this year. We told Ray Stubbs to get on his bike.
Stamina, that's what you need for the Tour de France. But when Jan Ullrich starts to defend his title on July the 11th, he'll be a far cry from the Champs-Élysées. He'll be in the vicinity of O'Connell Street, Dublin. So why Dublin and why outside France? Well, firstly, the Irish have been asking for years. And secondly, given there is another sporting occasion which reaches its grand climax on the start weekend of this year's tour, it's the perfect opportunity for Le Grand Départ, big start, to boldly pedal its wares from new frontiers. And in true Irish style, the tour will be the vehicle for a tribute to Stephen Roche and Sean Kelly, two homegrown heroes who know the tour inside out. Both will be alongside famous landmarks in the Irish capital for the prologue time trial that gets the race off and cycling. Will you show me around the course here in Dublin?
Like this? This is more like it.
Tight fit for some of us. British interest lies with Chris Boardman, a time trial specialist. But the next day it's out into the Irish countryside for the tour's 1,500 accredited vehicles and 3,500 personnel. Stage one proper of an event of staggering proportions starts and finishes in Dublin, 180 kilometres in between. There's sure to be a lump in the throat of Stephen Roche, the local lad who won the Tour in 1987.
I'm very happy the Tour is coming here because it'll bring it home to the Irish people how big the Tour de France actually is. You read about it a lot, you see it on television a lot, but I don't think it actually comes home to you until you actually see it. So I'm delighted now the Tour de France is coming here, and so everyone can see what it's really like.
We've been driving along the roads where you did your training for the Tour de France. How many miles would you put in?
Well, in an average year, you'd average, say, 35,000 kilometres, which is about 27,000 miles. So it's and you did all those 25,000 miles with kind of no oil change, no plugs change, just kind of plenty of sleep, plenty of eat, and plenty of rest.
Stage one also includes a trip through Avoca, the Irish village with the stage name of Ballykissangel. But if it's still raining, there is the attractive diversion of the local licensed premises. Up in Dublin, they're still pretty cool about the Tour coming to town. But follow the route further south, and they're excited about it all. Stage two, the rural route of Enniscorthy to Cork, means the peloton will pass through Carrick-on-Suir, the home of the other Irish vet of the Tour. Sean Kelly rode the event an incredible 14 times. He won the Green Jersey awarded for the most consistent finisher on 4 occasions. Everyone agrees he's the town's favourite sporting son.
Kelly being from here is the main, this is why people know about cycling. And the ordinary person on the street from around this area would know the history of cycling because of Kelly. They followed it, even though they mightn't be never on a bike as such. So there's a great interest in cycle racing in this area.
And Kelly's experienced eye says the field will hardly be tested by freshly tarmacked Irish roads.
As the riders say, it will be a piece of cake, really, the stages here in Ireland. Wicklow Mountain, Wicklow Gap, there won't be a rider who will get dropped there. And if they do, somebody get tailed behind, they will make it, contact again on the descent because the gap will be very little. And, a lot of people say here, they're going over Wicklow Gap, that will be, a big climb for them. But for those riders, Tour of France standards, it will be, a very, very easy day.
And so the cycling circus will roll into Cork, onto overnight ferries, and off to Roscoff for the start of Stage 3. The race won't be won in Ireland, but for sure, the Irish will leave an indelible, distinctive mark on the Tour.
I think Cork offers the Tour de France kind of excitement and festive atmosphere that it mightn't get anywhere else. One thing is guaranteed, and that is that the Tour de France will be received here in style. I think in a style befitting the departure of the biggest annual sporting event in the world as it leaves the country.
For potential spectators, well, the Irish are adamant it won't rain. And for the peloton, nothing to worry about, chaps.
As Sean Kelly says, stage 2 is a piece of cake.
Hang on. Oi, hang on.
Well, from two wheels to four, from cycles to lorries, actually not so much a lorry, more a coach. The man hoping to do in the north what Jack Charlton achieved in the south, Lawrie McMenemy.
So you got a nightcap there, John?
Yeah, well, there's no low-alcohol lager on this programme, I tell you. Have you spoken to Jack? What advice has he given you?
He rang me up, and this is true. He said, am I speaking to the manager of the Republic of Ireland? I says, no, Jack, that was you. Oh, he says, I got it mixed up.
And he said, scour every phone book you possibly can, everyone who once went on holiday to Northern Ireland, and register them immediately.
That's right.
And that's what you're doing?
Yep.
So when are you going to win the World Cup?
Not this year, that's for sure. I'm not in there. No, you've got to be realistic and know that there's severe limitations. I mean, Jack, for instance, pointed out that, the south have got 3 million inhabitants and the north have only got 1.5 million. Consequently, you've got less players to pick from. This particular squad we've picked this week, there's already 7 out injured. But the job is taken on that premise that you've got to get up and get on with it and win against the odds.
Now, you're ranked below Uzbekistan, Lebanon. There's other great giants of the footballing world. So what will you regard as success to sort of be Saint Lawrie for people in Northern Ireland?
Well, I'm not looking for anything for myself, to be fair. It's a great honour to be asked to manage. I think that the country needs success in the sporting world. And there's no better platform than the football team. I think that they want to see the pride and the passion in the wearing of the shirt that they would have themselves. I want players to go out and realise that they're representing this very, very passionate race who haven't had a lot of success recently, but they did have a few years ago. And we want to try and bring that back again. All the obvious things about lack of choice, players injured, this, that and the other, we all know that. But anybody that's picked has got to understand that on any one day, anybody can beat somebody else. A cup final, for instance, or a cup tie. Like Stevenage the other week, nearly beat a Premiership team.
Like Southampton in 1976.
Yes, and I think we've got to get 8 cup final performances in the Championship games.
Now, you always have appeared and have a reputation as being something of a disciplinarian, and I know in your days at Grimsby, you used to take the players down to the docks, didn't you, and say, look, this is what real people do. These fishermen get up at 4:30 in the morning and go out and get the mackerel, whatever it might be. So you're a pretty pampered person, really. How do you feel about, the £30,000, £40,000 a week footballers these days? Do you think they lead a pretty easy life?
Well, to start with, there's not many like that. They're the exception who are on massive money, and they're usually foreign players who've come in, and there's been a saving on the transfer fee or whatever. The game has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Managers are under tremendous pressure now for results because you've got the city involvement, the PLCs, people are looking at the share price as well as the football result. But the footballer has always got to remember that he is out there representing people and towns and countries. And at one time, in those days, for instance, the fish dock days, the players were in touch with, the man in the street could touch them, you could meet them in the cafe, have a cup of tea and whatever. Some of the players now are like on a cinema screen. The public can never get near them. And
is that good or bad?
I don't think it's too good because unless people around the players, particularly the agents and the people who are not involved in the club, unless they remind them of their duties and what it's all about.
We're talking about their duties. We've got all the business today at Newcastle United. Francis Lee resigning at Manchester City today. Who is a football club's first responsibilities to? The people who go and watch it?
Yes. The most important people within a club are the players. Because without the players, everything else falls by the wayside. The commercial side and whatever. It all depends on the players. The responsibility of the people who run the club, the directors, is to the supporters and, of course, shareholders now. And they're supposed to represent their best interests.
Now, you were, of course, once upon a time manager of Sunderland, but probably wisely in those days didn't let the TV cameras in, because I'm sure a lot of people watching us tonight are also they didn't want to see you, are also enjoying on BBC One all the traumas that Peter Reid has been enduring over the past 12 months.
Keep the f***ing ball. If you're not sure, keep the f***ing ball. We still got it. I know it's hard, I know there's wind, but it's f***ing elementary, yeah? We pass. And all week, and then we come out on a Saturday and we can't pass. We can't pass it from A to B. When we got it down on a couple of occasions and passed it, we can't live with you. They cannot live with you, and that's what pisses me off. Because you can do it. Keep the football. That's all I want. When you go to it, final day, do what you want. Be positive. Shots, crosses, get on with it. But just keep the football.
I think the message was pretty clear there. But as one half of a double act that was, in a sense, part of the most famous, infamous fly-on-the-wall football documentary with Graham Taylor, what do you feel about this style of intruding almost on a football club? Do you think some things are better not seen? Like half-time team talks?
Yes, I do, because you cannot deny that Peter Reid, for instance, is not passionate about the game. I mean, he is. And you see the grey hair, and he's only 27. That's the effect it has on managers. I mean, he's no need to go in there and do his top and blow fuses and everything, but he feels it. You know, that is shop floor language in the way he gets through to his players. I mean, they were listening, and they knew that he wasn't too happy, and they knew that they had to do better. But probably, in the cold light of day, it doesn't sound right to people on the outside. You know, I don't think that cameras should get right in there. I think it's nice to see how a club works during the week and how any business works, but that little bit inside, I think that the television, the media, people like yourself, it's good for you because you get people on the back foot, you get them off balance, you get them where you relax them so that they don't even know the camera's there. And that's when the little faux pas come out and the little mistakes, and that makes better viewing.
Whatever you achieve with Northern Ireland, could anything ever match that day in '76 when you won the FA Cup final?
If I won the World Cup, I would.
Well,
I think, and that was tremendous because it was for a club who weren't expected to do that. We were playing Manchester United, who are expected to win the Cup every 3 or 4 years. And that was the magic of it. And it brought a great feeling to a whole area. It bonded everybody together, you know, for weeks and weeks. And I mean, in a flippant comment afterwards, said, we should all have street parties, you know, and other sort of thing. And they went and did it. I mean, there were street parties. It was like the end of the war. And it affected the whole area. And it put smiles on their faces. And that's what footballers should remember. That's what I'll be saying when we get together next week. You know, it can change people's lives, even for a short time. The game itself used to be called the game of the working classes. It's a game of the non-working classes, really. It's for the people who need to be taken away from the problems for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, whatever the problems may be, and so they can sit and watch people representing them and giving that all and really, you know, bringing smiles to people's faces.
Well, good luck in the future with Northern Ireland. You can actually have a practice at sort of drinking the local drink now. Ladies and gentlemen, Lawrie McMenemy. And that's it for our Irish night. Next week, a sort of capital kind of evening. Henry Cooper, Billy Walker, Steve Davis, Eric Bristow and Vinnie Jones. Cockneys with muscles, alive, alive-o. We'll see you then.
The prospect of relegation looms for Sunderland and the season ticket sales have ground to a halt. It's all going pear-shaped in Premier Passion.